The Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 1, Section 3, Chapter 3, Powers. We have now come to the chapter in which the yoga power are described. First, dharana is holding the mind on to some particular object. Dharana, that is concentration, is when the mind holds on to some object either in the body or outside the body and keeps itself in that state. Second shlok, an unbroken flow of knowledge in that object is dhyan. The mind tries to think of one object to hold itself to one particular spot as a top of the head, the heart, etc. And if the mind succeeds in receiving the sensations only through that part of the body, through no other part, that would be dharana. And when mind succeeds in keeping itself in the state for some time, it is called dhyan, that is meditation. Shlok 3, when that giving up of all forms reflects only the meaning, is the samadhi. That comes when in meditation the form of our external part is given up. Suppose I were meditating on a book and that I have gradually succeeded in concentrating the mind on it and preceding only the internal sensation, the meaning, unexpressed in any form. The state of dhyan is called as samadhi. Shlok 4. These three, when practiced, is in regard to one subject, is samayam. When a man can direct his mind to any particular object and fix it there and then keep it there for a long time, separating the object from the internal part, this is Sanyam. This is Sanyam or Dharana, Dhyan and Samadhi, one following the others and making one. The form of things has vanished and only is the meaning remains in the mind. Shlok 5. By the conquest of that comes light of knowledge. When one has succeeded in making this Sanyam, all powers come under his control. This is the great instrument of the yogi. The object of the knowledge are infinite and they are divided into gross, grosser, grossest, and the fine, fine, finest, fine, finer, finest, and so on. The Sanyam should be first applied to gross things, and when you begin to get knowledge of this gross, slowly by stages it should be brought to the finer things. Shlok 6. That should be employed in stages. This is a note of warning not to attempt to go too fast. Shlok 7. These three are more internal than those that proceed. Before this, we had the pratyahar, pranayam, asana, yam, niyam. They are external parts. And the three, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, are the internal. When a man has attained to them, he may attain to omniscience and omnipotent. But that would not be salvation. These three would not make them mind nirvikalpa, challengeless, but would leave the seeds for getting bodies again. Only when the seeds are, as the yogi says, fried, do they lose the possibility of producing further plants. This process or power, this power cannot fry the seeds. Shlok 8. But even they are external to the seedless, that is samadhi. Compared with the seedless samadhi, therefore, even these are external. We have not yet reached the real samadhi, the highest but the lower stage. in which this universe still exists as we see it, and in which are all these powers. Shlok 9th. Shlok 9th. By the suppression of the disturbed impressions of the mind and by the rise of impressions of control, the mind which persists in the moment of control is said to attain the control modification. That is to say, in the first state of the samadhi, the modification of the mind has been controlled, but not perfectly, because if they were, there would be no modification. If there is a modification which impels the mind to rush out through the senses and the yogi tries to control it, that very control itself will be the modification. One wave will be checked by another wave. So, it will not be the real samadhi, in which all the waves subside, as control them itself will be a wave. At this lower samadhi is very much nearer to the higher samadhi than when the mind comes bubbling out. Shlok 10th. The flow becomes steady by habit. The flow of this continuous control of the mind becomes steady when practiced day after day, and the mind obtains the faculty of constant concentration. Shlok 11th. Taking in all sort of objects and concentration upon one object, these two powers been destroyed and manifested respectively. The chitta gets the modification called samadhi. The mind takes up various objects, runs into all sort of things. That is the lower state. There are higher states of the mind. When it takes up one object and executes all others, of which samadhi is the result. 12th Shlok. The one pointedness of the chitta is when the impression that is past and that which is present are similar. How are we to know that the mind has become concentrated? Because the idea of the time will vanish. The more time passes unnoticed, the more concentrated we are. In common life, we see that when we are interested in the book, we do not note the time at all, and when we leave the book, we are often surprised to find how many hours have passed. All time will have the tendency to come and stand in the one present. So, the definition is given. When the past and present comes and stands in one, the mind is called or said to be concentrated. The distinction among three kinds of concentration mentioned in aphorism 9, 11, 12 is as follows. In the first, the disturbed impression are merely held back but not altogether obliterated by the impression of the control, which just comes in the second. The former are completely suppressed by the latter, which stand in a bold relief, while in the third, which is the highest, there is no question of suppression, but only similar impressions succeed each other in the stream. ED. Shlok 13th. By this is explained the threefold transformation of form, time, and state in fine and gross matter and in the organs. By the threshold changes in the mind stuff has to form, time, and state are explained the corresponding changes in gross and subtle matter and in the organs. Suppose there is a lump of gold. It is transformed into the bracelet and again into an earring. These are changes has to form. The same phenomena looked at from the standpoint of time give us change of has to time. Again, the bracelet or the earring may be bright or dull, thick or thin, and so on. This is the change has to state. Now referring to the aphorism 9, 11, and 12, the mid stuff, the mind stuff is changing into vrittis. This is change has to form. That is passed through past, present, and future movements of time is change has the time. That the impression vary has to intensity within one particular period. Say present is change has to the state. The concentration thought in the preceding aphorism were to give the yogi a voluntary control over the transformation of his mind stuff, which alone will enable him to make this some sanyam named in Shlok 4. 14th Shlok. That which is acted upon by transformation, either past, present, and yet to be manifested in the quality. That is to say, the qualified is the substance which is being acted upon by time and by samskar and getting changed and being manifested always. Shlok 15. The succession of changes in the cause of manifold evolution. 16 Shlok. By making sanyam, by making sanyam on the three sort of the changes comes the knowledge of past and future. We must not lose sight of the first definition of sanyam. When the mind has attained to the state when it identifies itself with the internal impressions of the object, leaving the external, and when by long practice that is retained by the mind, and the mind can get into the state of the